Good morning, fellow declutterers, to another episode of Decluttering 55 Plus with Michelle Passoff. It's here that we could talk about subjects that can be confronting or confounding for folks as they age, but instead of sweeping them under the carpet and putting them off another day or forever, we bring these topics into the light of day to address them, learn new things, discover resources that can help get in action and get things done. As a result, our lives are enlightened and we're better able to leave a legacy and not a mess. We talk about health and technology and memoir writing, relationships, deciding on where to live and what to do next in life, financial and legal matters, and last but not least, we talk about final arrangements. If you think the cost of living is high these days, what do you think the cost of dying is? So today's guest is going to enlighten us on this subject so we can decide the best course of action when it comes to planning our final arrangements or the most perfect, uh, prudent send off for the ones we love. Ashlyn is the Director of Cemetery Solutions and Training and Development Specialist for the Security National Family of Companies. It's a mouthful, a company that focuses on end of life insurance products and services. She's also the co host of a video program on modern cemetery care called American Cemetery Live. She joins us today from St. Louis, Missouri to bring us news and information about pre planning final arrangements. It's Ashlyn Goodman with us. Welcome, Ashlyn. Before we
Hello.
before we dive into all the nuts and bolts of what we can and should consider about final arrangements for ourselves or the ones we love, tell us a little bit about yourself. What is your role in the funeral planning industry, and how did you decide on this for your career?
Well, that's a great question, Michelle. It's good to be with you today. I
Thank
don't
you.
find that many people are in elementary school thinking, oh, should I be a zookeeper or should I be in death care? So, most of the people that I know that have joined this field of work are people who have either had a personal testimony, and I would fall into that category, or their family has been in this business for generations and generations. So, unfortunately, in 2020, my mom passed away at a very young age, and I found myself at my local funeral home and cemetery making arrangements for her as I am an only child. And the person who was helping me actually said, "What do you do for work? You would be great at this." And I thought, no, not this. But at second thought, I got to thinking about it a little bit more, and I knew that after that monumental loss, I would be looking for a deeper meaning, and a lot of what she was sharing with me made sense. So I decided to get one over on the cemetery because I was already visiting 2 times a day and go ahead and work there instead, and I had a whole slew of ideas for that. But in all seriousness, I really learned so much, ended up loving it, getting my funeral director's license, and taking a position with a company to lead their cemetery consulting program, which is what I do now. I lend my help and expertise to cemeteries all across the country.
Life takes a lot of twists and turns. I know I didn't sit around when I was a kid dreaming about being a clutter consultant when I grew up. That's for sure. But sometimes life's circumstances bring you exactly where you should be. So now that you're here in the funeral business, if you will, let's see if we can bring some take out some of the fear associated with making pre-arrangements for your funeral. Now, it can you afford to die these days?
Well, look, there's good news and bad news on that one. The bad news is that you are probably going to feel the cost of it, like so many other things, as you have alluded to in the beginning. But the good news is that everyone that I have known has found some route or way to fund these types of things. So we'll get into a little bit more of that uh, and kind of explore what your options are.
Well, let's not wait a minute longer. Can you kind of lay out in layman's terms, if possible, what some of the options are to fund a funeral? This is the best thing you could do is fund before you die. Is it cheaper to fund before you die or after you die, or does it matter?
Well, you know what? It depends. So let's talk about four really simple options. Number one is you pay for exactly what you get when you pass away. The downside of that is going to be that you are going to pay what it costs today, and everything is going to be due in full at that time. There will be no further options than that. The second option would be a traditional life insurance policy, which so many of us have either through ourselves or through an employer. That has pros and cons. Definitely, that money is typically meant for your survivors to continue on their way of life, and there will be fees to assign that life insurance policy to
Does
a
the
funeral.
life insurance policy specify a certain amount within that policy for funerals? Or are you saying that the life insurance policy gives you a chunk of money and you're welcome to apply it to funerals if that's what you want to do?
The latter. And if you do choose to assign it to a funeral home or cemetery, you will be subject to whatever fees they charge for that service. Now, a final expense policy, Michelle, is something that dedicates funds to a burial or a funeral. The downside with that is that not everybody accepts final expense policies, and that if you have a final expense policy for $5,000 or $10,000 today and you took it out 20 years ago, it may not have kept up with inflation for you. And then the final option, to your point,
Before we go on, Ashlyn, your final expense policy,
uh-huh.
what is that called? Where do you go? Where do you buy it? How much does it cost?
That is literally called a final expense policy, and many insurance companies do offer one of those. How much it costs depends on how much you want the face value of the policy to be. So if you want a $5,000 policy, $10,000 policy, or more, you will pay subject to that.
So it's a straight out payment of money, and it's
Exactly.
specifically designated for final expenses.
You've got it.
And
Yes,
it's and you pay in real time once you cash in on that policy.
exactly.
Okay, let's go on to the next.
The next is by far, in my opinion, the best option, and that is a prearrangement. Rather than all of these hypotheticals and these big chunks of money, a prearrangement is sitting down with a funeral home and cemetery and saying, this is exactly what I want. These are my wishes. I'm documenting them, and I'm also taking the opportunity to pay for them in advance. Why this is a positive thing is because money doesn't make decisions for you. So if you have $1 million in life insurance, wonderful. You still have no decisions or selections made. And for arrangements that oftentimes require hundreds of decisions to be made, it's important for you to make those yourself. When you take out a prearrangement for yourself, you also have the ability to pay over time rather than passing away and having to
Mm.
pay all at once. And you are going to pay whatever it costs in, let's say, 2026 or whenever you take it out. So if you don't pass away, Michelle, for 20 years, good for you. On average, our industry doubles in cost every 10 to 12 years, so you will save yourself a lot of money in the long run.
And who do you buy a prearrangement policy with?
That is something that you would buy through the funeral home and cemetery that you desire to use at your time of passing.
The funeral home and the cemetery are they aren't always related, are they?
They aren't always related. You will find that some funeral homes are standalone buildings and they just operate as themselves. And same way with cemeteries, you may just find a standalone cemetery. Now, there are combination locations where the cemetery and funeral home are on the same property, but that's maybe 50% of the time.
So if you're getting a prearrangement policy, is it with the home or the cemetery?
You have to think about them as two separate stores, as you will. So you will get one with the funeral home, and you will also get one with the cemetery.
I see. Okay. And what does it cover? Like what can you like if I'm shopping to go to a prom, I have my shoes and my jewelry and my hair and my dress. I mean, when you prearrange a funeral, can you enumerate some of the decisions that will go into that policy? And I guess the price of that policy will change from the volume of items that you select. Is that how it works?
Exactly. Unfortunately, it's hard to give a solid answer on that or a solid answer on the cost because it really comes down to what your needs are or what your family's needs are. So, one of the biggest questions right now is, will I be cremated or will I have a traditional funeral? Of course, your prices are going to vary a great deal with that. Now, Michelle, you can get a basic cremation. The lowest I've seen it is $699. And
Oh,
I have certainly done my fair share of $18,000 funerals. And so, if I had to guess, neither one of those things are the best option for those listening today, which is why it is really important to call and visit the funeral home that you desire to use and have a conversation with a funeral professional about what you need and what it's going to cost you.
if you move or you decide you don't want to go to that funeral home, and you want to go to another funeral home, and you do that, 5 or 10 years down the road, what happens to that policy?
Well, what we know is that we live in a really mobile time. People do move, and it's important to note that your money is not held hostage. You can move, and it is no detriment to you. Now, if you are working with a family owned funeral home, you may just cancel your pre-arrangement because they may not have other locations, and that's okay. You can take something out later. The good news is you had protection in the meantime that you were living there, or you may have gone through a larger organization like a corporation, and they might have locations in other states that you can just transfer to. The,
If you take your money, if you say, um, I'm going to cancel this policy because I'm moving, or
yes.
I've decided to go somewhere else, how much would you lose everything that you already paid them?
No, the only thing that you might lose is like a processing fee, something very, very small, but you would get back all of the equity that you have in it, if that makes sense.
So you have to read the fine print and make sure that they offer a refund should you change your minds.
Sure, and 9 times out of 10, they will. There are very few times where somebody is going to be adamant to not give your money back because if you're not using the services, they have no reason to keep the money.
Great, because I just canceled a gym membership and they didn't give me my money back. So
Oh my gosh. This is
I,
the worst.
they said you can come back. It was personal training. They said you can come back later and use the leftover sessions, but I didn't read the fine print because they gave it all on the little computer at the gym, and I didn't wait until it was printed out large enough to see it. So maybe reading the fine print would be part of the exercise with your funeral plans too.
Yes, it's a great question to ask, and it always seems like the craziest little things like the gym membership or the cell phone that are the hardest to cancel. I don't know why that is.
Oh, you have that experience then.
Oh, sure, yes.
Luckily, we don't have the experience with final arrangements yet. So this final arrangement, you can. It's possible that if you read the fine print, if you change your mind, you can. Now, do you pay that over time, or you pay that in the lump sum, or you pay that after your ancestors pay that? Like, how does that work?
You have two options. Option number one is to say, you know what, I have the money and I feel like just taking care of it. You can pay it off in full. And many people choose to do it. The funniest part is many people will even choose to put it on a credit card because they get the points from it.
You want to be able to travel while you're living, so that's what I always use my points for.
Yep. Or your second option is to say, you know what, I either don't want to give you a lump sum or I cannot financially give you a lump sum. What are my payment options? And most funeral homes will say, well, do you want to pay it off over 1 year, 5 years? What does that look like for you and your budget? And they will make finance options for you that fit within that.
Are there any other options available? So you mentioned um, uh, the insurance policy, a final expense policy, the pre-arrangement policy. Are there any other options you have when it comes to pre-arranging your funeral?
Just paying for it at the time of need, which of course I would not recommend.
Or is there something? Why does it come to my mind that there might be trusts or bank accounts that you could set up that are designated for final expenses? Is that another way to do it? But that still makes you pay real time. You don't. you don't get the advantage of 5 or 10 years down the road. It's going to be more expensive.
Yes, and the other thing to consider is that, with all due respect, when you pass away, you won't be the one dealing with it. And so, to our point earlier of the money not making the decisions for you, somebody else will still be at the wheel determining if they did what you would have wanted or if they did the right thing for you and dealing with the stress and logistics of that.
So, which brings up a good point. Who besides you should know about these policies or decisions that you make about your funeral?
Great question. So, this is not one of those things that you want to keep to yourself. This is something that you and people do it. They keep it like some big secret because they think that people will be upset, which it can be a bit of an upsetting topic, right? But you want to tell whoever is going to be in charge for you after your passing. And so, for the legal purposes of this question, most often that is going to be your next of kin. The only time that that is not true is if you have a durable power of attorney with the right of sepulcher. They have to have the right to decide what your disposition is. A regular power of attorney will not work.
Oh, is that right? Uh huh.
Mhm. So the majority of
So what is
people,
it called?
durable power of attorney with the right of sepulcher.
Sepulcher.
Yep. And
I've
it
never
just
heard that
means
word. How do you spell that?
Good question. It just means the right of disposition. So
Uh,
maybe just type that instead. But for the majority of people, your next of kin is going to be your spouse. If you do not have a spouse and you have adult children, it will be them. If you do not have adult children, it will be your siblings, but it will kind of fall in that line of who your next of kin is. So when you determine who
you
that
have
is,
to you have to designate that to somebody.
well, it's designated on your behalf. It's your next in line, next of kin. So that's kind of how that would go, the process that that would follow. In any capacity, they should be aware that you have something in place, whether it is a phone number or a lot of places when you do a pre-arrangement will give you a little card to put in your wallet that says, I have a
Yeah.
pre-arrangement with ABC Funeral Home. You can give them one of them. You can give them a copy of the contract, your power of attorney, all of your bank accounts. That's kind of up to you. But in any capacity, it should not be a surprise that you have it.
Yeah, from as a clutter consultant, from a clutter consultant's point of view, I like to keep a notebook or a file where a lot of things would go into that, including the paperwork for the payment of your final arrangements.
Absolutely.
Going back to what should be like, I don't think I'm clear, so I don't know if the audience is clear on would your pre-arrangement contract include like whether you're going to be cremated or you're going to be buried, or whether or not you're going to have a visitation, or whether or not you're going to wear a pink dress, or whether or not there's going to be flowers, or whether or not you're going to have a movie. Like, how specific um, is there a laundry list of things you check off and make decisions about while you're doing the payment?
Yes, when you are meeting with a well qualified funeral professional, they should be giving you all of your options, and you should have the right to say no or yes to whatever you want. And when you are finished selecting from the options that they give you, some options you might not even know are a possibility, right? You mentioned movie. Okay, some people are probably listening and thinking, what? But there are a lot of additional things that you can add. And some people love those and some people don't. But when you have the right to select what is best for you, then you get a final price on that, and then you determine how you want to pay for it, whether that's going to be upfront or in payments. Then you get an itemized contract with every single thing that you selected on it so that you know at the time of need exactly what you are expected to get, and you can have somebody, your next of kin or whoever's going to be in charge for you, spot checking that for you.
I would imagine that for the loved friends and loved ones left behind, that this is a great relief if you took the responsibility to make these decisions before you passed.
It is
What's your experience with that?
It is absolutely one of the greatest gifts that you can have because you're basically allowing your loved ones to grieve with their family at the time of your loss rather than having to play a, party planner, if you will, and spend a couple of hours seriously with a funeral director and make hundreds of decisions, not knowing exactly who to call if something were to happen. That experience can be very different if you have a prearrangement in place. It can look like knowing exactly who to call and then coming in just to put a final signature on things, and then having the opportunity to spend time with those who you love doing what is important, which is grieving the loss.
So it gives rest in peace new meaning, right?
I think so.
um, can you tell me, because I'm going through a particular situation in my own life at the moment where my father had a deed to cemetery plots before he passed, and when my mother passed, when I was cleaning out um, her place, I found the deed, so I knew that he had these plots, and if my sisters and I wanted to use them, they were ours for the taking. Um, Now, however, how do you pass down, like, how is buying a cemetery plot part of that prearrangement package? And if you bought it separately, um, then how do you pass it along to other members of the family? Like if my father had 5 children and he has 8 cemetery plots, then if he was, I don't know what he was figuring, but how do you say, well, you get two and you get three? How do you pass down something like that?
I think this kind of falls into our question of who do you let know what you have? It's kind of crazy. So many of these things do slip through the cracks, and then you find out later that your family did actually own space, and you have to determine who it goes to. But for this situation, all of your siblings have equal right to that property. And so if you have cemetery property, you want to be very intentional about telling your family and your children, hey, just so you know, we own 3 or 5, or, it used to be really common to own 8 or 12 plots, if you will. But we own these. And
When
when
you
we
get
pass
them,
away,
is it a first come first serve, or should you designate in a will that these plots, 2 plots go here, 2 plots go there, 4 plots go there?
you
Should you
know,
designate that? Otherwise, is it first come first serve?
some people will designate it in their will, and many people will say, I'm not here anymore, with all due respect. You guys figure it out. Kind of assuming that you might not need as much as your sisters, or they have, whatever situations come about, but that you guys have 5 spaces and there are 3 of you. So whatever you want to do is great. And then the cemetery should redeed them to you, proving that your parents are no longer on this earth and that now you guys are the rightful owners of those. And that will also include purchasing the opening and closing of those grave spaces,
Oh,
and memorialization. Those are things that people often overlook.
yeah, where they do, and I understand that it's actually quite a bit of money to dig and do whatever you have to do. There's other. It's not like you're without expense just because you own a plot.
Sure. It can be a lot more money than people think that it is. And again, another good question to ask is, do I have everything that I need to be placed in this space, or are there additional costs that go into this? If it's a reputable cemetery and they have the proper licensing, not because, they're not reputable because they don't have the licensing. Some places you can't get it. If they have the licensing in place, you can prearrange those things and also make payments on them. So it can turn a large chunk into several little bite-sized payments for you.
What if you die before you've finished making the payments?
Due in full at the time of passing.
Due in full at the time of passing. So somewhere you have to, like, who pays that? You have to tell your family, I have a savings account for the remainder, or here's my credit card, or what do you do with that?
Yes, so often that really is going to be up to the person who is on your bank accounts with you. And as we get older, it's important to have somebody on those bank accounts, or the whoever is handling your arrangements would have to pay that themselves. I've seen it both ways. I've seen it be prearranged. I've seen people be on bank accounts. I've seen people have to pay it themselves. But if you want to use those spaces, somebody has to pay it. Unfortunately, there is no credit plan for deaths that have occurred.
Is there a difference between what's the best way to choose the funeral home and the cemetery? Are there things you should be aware of about
Mhm.
choosing um, where you're where you are choosing the place of final resting place?
That's really a good question. We think that because this is such a serious matter, and it is, that every place is reputable and that they are all the same. And I am here to tell you, they are not all the same. And you must, as an informed consumer, do your research with this just as you would anything else. You must read the Google reviews. You can go on word of mouth. You have to meet with these individuals. You have to take a tour of the facilities, and you have to ask the right questions and see for yourself if this is the right fit for you. And if you see some not so pleasant reviews or you see some not so pleasant things while you are visiting, trust me when I say those things do not often get better, and trust your gut.
Um, Okay, well, on that note, we're going to encourage you to bite the bullet. Just because you make your final arrangements doesn't mean you're going anywhere. It just means that when you do, you'll rest in peace, and so will the ones you love. So I want to thank you, Ashlyn Goodman, for being with us today to take a little of that trepidation of pre planning final arrangements off our shoulders. It takes initiative to make those important plans and decisions, but at least you spare yourself the sorrow of having to make them in a moment of grief. So, as you know, each week we talk with authors, authorities, experts, geeks, and everyday people about different ways we can all approach aging with our eyes wide open. We're all living a little longer and better and than previous generations, so the actions and decisions that we make do set an example for generations to come about how we can age gracefully. If you want to sign up on our website for news you can use and get specific notifications about upcoming conversations on decluttering 55 plus with Michelle Passoff, go to www.decluttering55plus.com. Hit that Let's Connect button and sign up there and let us know what you've done to pre plan your final arrangements, what worked and what didn't. And that way we can help each other. And that's the point here. So let us know if there's any other topic you want covered as well. Share this program with your friends, like it on Facebook, follow us on this one and subscribe or whatever they do on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube. If you haven't seen a copy of Decluttering 55 Plus, Wisdoms to Create a Legacy, Not a Mess, pop on over to Amazon.com or layitflat.com and have a look at the video on the 20 illustrated messages in the spiral book, and it will catapult you to action in all areas of your life. It will invigorate you and make a difference for generations to come. Again, I want to thank you, Ashlyn Goodman, for being with us today to address a challenging area of life like funeral and funeral finances. And we want to thank you for listening and learning out there. Until we meet again, folks, enjoy yourselves and be sure to have a clutter free day. Thank you.